Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me, I've got a full house. Welcome, Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What is good, guys?
As we are getting closer and closer to the start of the Premier League season, we are going to continue our preseason coverage and now continuing with everyone's favorite team, Liverpool Football Club. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is at @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Let's get straight into it, boys. Liverpool last season, not the greatest season on paper. Finished fifth place with 67 points. Europa League football next season. I know a lot of Twitter accounts are enjoying that and eating that up. With the Europa Twitter account constantly posting about Liverpool and a lot of rival fans making fun of that. Last season, the team finished with 75 goals for and 47 goals against, same as Chelsea actually in terms of goals conceded. Mo Salah was the team's top scorer with 19 in the league and 30 in all competitions. And then the team got knocked out of the EFL Cup and the FA Cup in the fourth round by Manchester City and Brighton respectively. Made it through to the round of 16 in the Champions League, but were eventually knocked out by Real Madrid. And to add on to sort of how the season went, boys, Liverpool never broke into the top four last season, only reaching fifth place after game week 26, then moved on to lose that place, and then finally regaining that place after game week 34. So 4 games out from end of the season all the way to the end. And so yeah, that's just a taste of how the season went. Gio, I know you're a Man U fan, and so this might have been music to your ears. What are your takes on this Liverpool season?
Just tough. Obviously, with the signing of Nunez and things of that nature, it was tough in the sense that obviously, for the sake of accomplishments for that club, obviously the last couple of seasons have been huge in terms of even just going back to winning the league and things of that nature. You thought it might be sort of like like a new regime where it's a Liverpool, in a spot where Man City is kind of being touted as always the favorites coming in to win the league, or at least compete for that 1-2 spot. And then to have a season like that, obviously barring injuries, and kind of the age catching up, and almost the league kind of like figuring out how Klopp wants to approach each game with the players that they do have. I think this season was almost a wake up call that kind of said to them that we need to change things up, and we need new and fresh faces on this team, and it's pretty evident. I think it was a good wake up call season, but in terms of having to endure the season as a fan, it was definitely extremely tough.
Yeah, Mac, I'm not sure if you recall, at the lowest of lows, there were some people even calling for, hey, is this Klopp's last year in charge? Should there be a change made in management? Time of recording, there hasn't been, and it looks like Klopp will be moving forward, the manager, come next season. But yeah, similarly, what were your thoughts on how that season went for Liverpool last season?
It wasn't ideal, but it needed to happen. What I mean by this is that there's a lot of players in that Liverpool squad that were getting phased out, and necessarily so. The Sadio Manes, the Roberto Firminos, eventually what happened in this offseason with Henderson, with Milner, with Fabinho. There's a lot of players that had to be moved on for the sake of continuing to evolve for this club, because you can't have core members of this club in their early to mid to late 30s, even in James Miller's case, being core members, because you're resting too much on previous laurels from players, and they're not going to continue to improve and excel and push the club forward. So unfortunately, that transitional period, it's going to come with some aches. Any transitional period is going to happen with that. Like a player like Darwin Nunez, that I feel like definitely symbolizes a lot that would happen. It seems like there's a great potential from what he showed from us last season, but wasn't able to hit the heights that he's needed to excel in the Premier League. So that very much for me symbolizes what Liverpool were last year, is that they're they were in that transitional period, growing, seeing if they can evolve. And this is the season really that they have to take that next step forward, because they've invested a lot in the squad, which we'll talk about. And a lot of those players that they had brought in last year, like the likes of Nunez and Gapco, I've had time to get ready and adjust to the Premier League. So now they should be at full guns a-blazing. So it was unfortunate, but necessary last season.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you guys are both similarly on the same page. Yeah, no, looking at the squad, and of course, I'm a Liverpool fan, so a lot of the games where sometimes the team would have a couple injuries. You're looking at James Milner coming off the bench. You know, we all know James Milner's strengths and weaknesses and what he can do. Great servant to the club, but that's not what you want. That's not who you want to come off the bench to provide depth, especially in crucial games in maybe like the Champions League or any cup competitions. And similarly, you know, you got Harvey Elliott, who's young, but you know, he was kind of thrown into the spot. He did well originally at the beginning of the season, but quickly became injured, and then you know things happened, and he kind of finished the season on a lower point. And of course, there's Curtis Jones, who was in and out, and then finished the season strong, but you know, there's like Cody Gakpo and Darwin Nunez should now be settled and moving into the next season, be called upon to you know improve the squad. But let's dive straight into some of the off-season changes, like Mac mentioned, Gio. Two notable transfers. First one, Alexis McAllister from Brighton, £36 million, and Dominic Szoboszlai from RB Leipzig, £60 million. What are your takes on those, Gio? Much needed transfers, or do you think? But yeah, what do you think on those transfers?
Extremely necessary. I think, yeah, definitely. Hendo, Fabinho, James Milner. You know, you don't really go into the Premier League season thinking, okay, this is my midfield three, or like this is going to be a rotation of my midfield three. Obviously, with who is it? Is it Alcon? Is it Thiago? Yeah, Thiago. Sorry. Thiago being injured, coming in and out of the lineup. You know, you try to you know, mix things up and go out there and sign Arthur Melo, which obviously he didn't play because he got injured right away. You know, that's not a midfield that's going to compete in this Premier League, and we've seen the quality, even in lower ranked clubs where the quality is there. They have a 1-2 midfielder that can really change the game on a pivot, and when you look at that Liverpool midfield, you just don't think that. And I think the additions where you know, you see Hendo leaving, obviously longtime captain. You see James Milner leaving, Fabinho leaving. Yes, there's a changing of the guards, but it's absolutely necessary. But you've got one guy in McAllister who's Premier League ready, who has shown, you know, the quality, you know, at the Premier League level, at the World Cup level. And then obviously, I don't know how you pronounce his name. I don't want to butcher his name. The guy from Leipzig. What just call him that? Szoboszlai.
There you go.
Honestly, not too familiar with his game, but I know he is quite good on the ball. He's able to win the ball back quite quickly, and that's how Liverpool is going to want to operate. You know, you have to win the ball in key areas to send those long balls, to send Trent going, to send Robertson going, the front three going. So yeah, no, those players are very key, and you know, I think the core of the success will come from the midfield.
Yeah, no, big transfers, especially early on in the transfer window, announced. Gio as well, Mac touched on some of the transfers out that I'll just mention now. Fabinho, of course, to Etihad for £40 million, Henderson to Al Ettifaq for £12 million, and then, of course, you got the Quartet of Firmino, Keita, Oxlade-Chamberlain, and James Milner all leaving on free as their contract expired. I know Gio mentioned that midfield, and of course we saw it time and time again last season. Midfield is the area that Liverpool needed to sort of revitalize. What are your thoughts so far on what's been done to the squad, and is there something that still needs to be done to improve that squad? What do you think?
I think absolutely. I would give it if you were to ask me for a grade, I think that they are still would be incomplete as well as some of the other teams that we have talked about, because I feel like they've done half of what they really necessarily need to have done. And to explain this, let's just kind of get on the same page in terms of how often transfers generally work. For how successful the club, giving situation, give everything, it's about 50%. So between Szoboszlai and McAllister, obviously, ideally, both would work. But realistically, one of them's not going to perform as well, and they're definitely going to fight for similar positions, playing as kind of that shuttler role in midfield potentially. And it'll be very interesting to see, and maybe we'll talk about a little bit later, the role that Trent Alexander-Arnold may play in midfield, and maybe that has an impact. But the key part for me is Fabinho. Even though I think it's phenomenal business, they signed him 4 or 5 years ago for 45 million, sell him on for now 40. So you've only really spent 5 years. You get the prime of his career, phenomenal. But he was irreplaceable. I know this might be extreme, and I think that they're not the same levels of player, but the representation of what he does for a club is not dissimilar to, for me, of what Patrick Vieira did for Arsenal for a long-term time period. He was a big body, not afraid of a tackle. They called him the lighthouse because he was able to clean up and spot danger and stop everything from happening in that midfield. And if those Shutlers were going up, if the Hendersons, if the Thiagos, who, to be fair, are not the greatest defensively, Fabinho's there to step them up. So even though you have those theoretical replacements between McAllister and Szoboszlai, if they both work well, that Fabinho spot is a big hole. And I don't think they've been linked to the type of player that's a natural replacement. So unless there's a complete change of play style, they still need at least one or two more bodies in that midfield to have now a complete midfield. I think backline, we're not going to expect any changes as much from what I've heard. Frontline, there's probably dream situations, but I think they have what they need there on both sides, to be completely honest, because they're attacking five of, and I know I'm going quite a lot into it, but between Gapco, Diaz, Nunez, and Salah,
yeah,
and then
Salah and
Jota, yes. So between the five of them, I think you're fine. If you can get an injury, you'll be okay. You have rotational options, you're okay. The issue for me is the midfield. And unless Szoboszlai and McAllister both work out perfectly from day one, which is unlikely, and they get somebody else in to be able to kind of fill in that Fabinho spot, I think they're, in midfield-wise, they're still in rough sledding. Because the only other player that I haven't mentioned here, and maybe Ray, you might have a thought on him, I don't know if Bajcetic, the midfield, I think he's 17 right now, or turning 18. I don't know if he's ready to play large amount of big time minutes in the midfield, kind of in that spot right there as kind of the shield. Or is there a change of play style? What do you see, I guess, from as a Liverpool fan's perspective? What do you think still needs to happen, or from what we've gone through, what changes do you like? Or like I said, still
definitely on point there. The holding midfield or some defensive midfield position still needs a sort of standout player for that position. Bajcetic did well when he had his couple appearances last season, but it was more out of necessity. And Fabinho leaving is huge because he was, even though he didn't have the best season, he was still quality enough to hold down that position. And that whole being left there is huge for Liverpool, especially a team that continues to concede goals in transition and needs coverage, especially in wide defensive areas. And so, yeah, I'm very interested to see who still is going to be coming in. I think Klopp has mentioned that there are still players that they're looking to bring in. And on that note, Gio, I'm going to read out some names here. Romeo Lavia from Southampton. Continued talks about a bid of £50 million for him. A couple of them have been rejected. I think just under the 50 million mark, and so it's still an ongoing sort of saga there. Andre from Fluminense for £20 million, also a holding midfielder, though coming from the Brazilian league, and the shift might be a big shift for him, especially in the first season. I saw links about Andreas Christensen from Barcelona to provide more help on the left center back position. I'm not exactly sure if that's the player that it's going to exactly come through, but I think that's a big position that would need depth as well. If, for example, Virgil van Dijk goes off injured, not a lot of players can fill in that spot. So I think that's why he's linked. And of course, the crazy links about Kylian Mbappe, 1 year loan with, of course, 2024 moving to Real Madrid. Gio, out of, I guess, those transfers or even potential other links that they've been linked to, what do you think Liverpool? If you're a Liverpool fan, who would you want to sort of come in and help the squad?
Definitely Lavia. I think obviously he's obviously very pacey. He's obviously played in the Prem. I think if they can get that price a little lower, obviously I think the valuation's a little high on him. Yes, there's potential there, but I just think 50 mil for a player that still has, plenty to prove. A couple of bright spots here and there, but still has a lot to prove. But again, he can be a key rotational piece. Like we've discussed before, I think the Premier League transition period, I think, is a very real thing, and I think because they had such a almost turbulent year last year, I don't think as a club or even the owner would want to risk having another one. So or risk having even a Kylian Mbappe. Who knows whether he'll have a transitional slump. So players from Brazil, players from League On, they're as good as they are. They can still have that period. So obviously, we didn't see it from Holland. There are outliers, but if I had to bank on anything, I would bank on someone who's already played in the Prem and one sort of has the abilities to fit that Klopp system and are not going to be complaining and moaning that they could be potentially a rotational piece for the meantime until they find something that works better for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. Mac, I guess same question for you.
I think Lavia is a great fit. Weirdly enough, I don't see him traditionally as kind of a 6. I see him more as an 8 because if you kind of look at his statistical kind of map out of how he plays, he's definitely much more a carrier of ball out of possession than trying to find a transitional pass versus a stopper in midfield, breaking up play. That's hasn't been his strong suit thus far in his career. He's still young. He's still 18, I think it is. So he still has a lot of potential to be able to grow and evolve as a player. So that may not be who he is going forward. But he came from Man City initially, wanted to be able to get game time in Southampton for large sections, was arguably one of their best players. And given his age, given that he's kind of already showed it in the Prem, if you put better players around him, maybe you would expect more. But I think I see him much more as the kind of another rotational spot in those shuttler roles if Liverpool are still playing that 3-man midfield versus that hole as the 6. I think that's the bigger one. So if they're able to address that need, I don't have a natural fit that comes to mind. Maybe the Andre from Fluminense, that might be the case. If you get both of them, one of them likely will work out and you can at least rotate and try different things with the Bajcetic playing in rotation as needed. Because even though, like I said, I don't know if he's ready for prime time, he can start spot minutes as needed. So I think that's why I think you need more than just one option. Lavia is a good starting point, but it'll be interesting to see how much they're further going to invest into this squad before the season starts. But at the very least, one of the two, ideally both, or if not, like I said, Lavia plus another.
Yeah, no, and the season's starting soon, so those moves have to happen sooner rather than later. And we're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be discussing how Liverpool can possibly line up next season and what we predict for them in the upcoming season as well. So stay with us. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We're going to continue our coverage of Liverpool FC for the next season, and we just talked about some of the transfers in and transfers out from the team. Mac, the big question is upon us now. How do you think they will start with their 11? To give a little bit of context, they are still playing a 4-3-3 system in all of their friendly games. Trent Alexander-Arnold started 2 of the last 4 friendly games at the center defensive mid position. But also in the last 2 or 3 games, he's also dropped off to the right back position. Curtis Jones and other players have sort of started to fill into that position, but still looks like that's the way to go forward. That being said, same midfield, same forward line. How do you expect Liverpool to line up?
I think weirdly enough, they're not a team that's going to carry over for towards the end of last season, because the end of last season you saw it started off as a 4-3-3 and then became a box midfield towards the end of the season with Trent tucking in into that midfield position. I think that Klopp's going to go back to his more tried and true method and definitely play with the trio in midfield with the 6, 2, 8 and have them shuttler with Trent going more so back out wide, I would assume. I think that he's a very interesting player, and maybe something that I might bring up later. But I think we're going to go back to something very, very similar because there hasn't been the wholesale changes I think needed to happen to make a full kind of squad reset or change of formation. And I think that comes down to the combination of both Trent and Andy Robertson, because they're both such phenomenal, great fullbacks. I would argue some of the best fullbacks the Premier League has ever seen, and both still in good time in their career where they can still give a lot to the team going forward. And since both of them want to bomb forward, it's hard to add more players to midfield to take away defensively. So I think that we're going to see much more of a transition and a reset to the beginning of last season, but now we'll have better players in and around them, some other players more suited to their positions, like the Nunez, like Gakpo, coming in and already having minutes, understanding their role and what they need to do pressure-wise to play a Klopp system. So I think it's one of the few teams where instead of looking forward to changing, and a lot of teams have looked at playing in that box midfield, especially at the top of the Premier League, I think we're going to see a reversion back to the old Klopp, the old Liverpool, and kind of be where everyone, what's the saying, when everyone zags, they zag. That's what I was looking for. Yes. So they're going to zag back and try to play something different and see if they can exploit a weakness that the Man Cities, the Arsenals, that they're trying to play that box midfield, see if they can kind of outwork them by having such a bombarding force of players trying to apply pressure. So I think we're going to see something, like I said, to go back to the beginning of last season and kind of the Klopp prime time era for Liverpool, really.
And I think it's vital that, of course, McAllister and Szoboszlai are additions to the team. What lacked last year a lot was those legs in midfield to do the pressing. And if you get the press right with those guys, it's going to be deadly. But that's only if they get it right. Gio, if they don't, is there another way that they possibly could change it? Or do you agree that still, it's a matter of finding the right center mid to keep that system? Or if they don't, or what happens if they don't get that center mid? Do you think that they could replicate sort of what they did towards the end of last season and sort of like a midfield of like the Cities and Arsenals? What do you think would be the best approach?
I feel like, I think they'll try what they tried later in the latter half of the season, only if they're desperate. I think Klopp is a firm believer in his system, and he always has been. Obviously bringing the style that he did with Dortmund to Liverpool. Kind of that rock star football, as people like to call it, or liked to call it. So I think that's tried and true for him. I don't think he'll stray too far away. I think his heart still craves that type of football. But I think he still has the talent for it. He has the speed up front. Obviously, you have a healthy. Sorry, what's his name? Did I forget his name already? The Colombian.
Diaz?
Oh, Luis Diaz.
Luis Diaz. He has Luis Diaz coming back healthy. Sorry, guys, I just blanked. Nunez, obviously, you're hoping for a comeback season. Salah, obviously, still 30 goals in all competitions. Some, I think, were, I think his stats were slightly inflated based on the goals that he scored. But yeah, I think more so is that he'll continue playing the way he's always played. And that, kind of box midfield will only come if they're kind of desperate and looking for more offensive ways to score, and getting Trent, further up the pitch. Then yeah, I think that's the only way we can see that box midfield again.
I agree. Still, I think the way to move forward would be sort of to revert back to what you've had before and just replenish those legs in midfield and hope that you get everything right with this group. And hopefully, once everyone gets into the system, and then of course injuries allowing, the squad is healthy and moving forward, that probably is the way that Klopp wants to manage his team. That being said, now guys, we're gonna pick out a key player key player that would have potentially a great season or potentially a horrible season. And Mac, we'll start with you. Which one of these Liverpool players is your player to watch for next season?
I think I teased this just a moment ago, and even in our break. I'm going to pick the new vice captain of Liverpool, Trent Alexander-Arnold, the embodiment of leadership, the new Henderson, some might say. I think the key thing for him, and it's really important, is because he's such a vital player offensively in terms of chance creation. Is there going to be an involvement of his role? Is he, like I said, going to be tucking to midfield? Is he going to be playing as that 6? Can he do that role? Offensively, I think we're all on the same page. He has everything in the toolbox. He can do whatever he wants there. But can the question defensively be answered? Is a transition to midfield the way to go? Is maybe from a wide back position, is he there's going to be a change in how they play, where he's not exposed as much. He's not going to be kind of get that James Harden defensive treatment that he gets on Twitter potentially, right? Is there a way for him to be successful offensively, carry this team, continue to create chances? Because a lot of the players around him, like the Nunez, I feel like he's going to elevate and make better. They're going to be fine because he's good enough offensively to help them around. But his role in the team in terms of either being in midfield or being in fullback, can he not have those drawbacks and cannot be exposed as much because the other players around him are playing in front of him? So, because that has been a key transition of the last couple of years. The players in front of him got worse. He got exposed more. Is the reshuffle, the refresh in midfield going to help kind of hide those weaknesses, or he's going to step up and not have those weaknesses exposed because he's playing so well? One of the two things happen. And I think that if he's having a great season, if he's having a season that he had maybe 3 or 4 years ago, Liverpool clearly going to be in a top 4 position, clearly going to be where they want to be in the Premier League as well in other competitions. If he is getting, as I said, that treatment line, if he's getting abused like that, if we're seeing a lot of those clips, if he's getting exposed, you're going to see Liverpool fall down the table. So for me, he's there kind of the bellwether of, are they going to have a successful season or not a successful season? So both positive and negative, it's up to him to decide.
Oh no, that's a great shout. Of course, I like that shout, and the play I'll be watching for sure, especially given that responsibility now. So that being said, I'm a Liverpool fan, so I have multiple players to watch. Let me let you choose one now, so that you get the opportunity.
I agree that there's multiple players that obviously will be vital to the Liverpool success. But my one is definitely Mr. Darwin Nunez. I think, obviously games are won by goals. It's gonna alleviate, pressure in the midfield. It's gonna alleviate pressure on the defense. Obviously Virgil van Dijk didn't have a great season last year as well. He's obviously, one to blame, as well as the Mo Salahs and things of that nature. But Darwin Nunez, I think he struggled a little, struggled a lot from in front of goal, even putting away easy chances. I think that pressure kind of almost got to him. So I think, him scoring those easy ones, him putting the team on a lead, just alleviates pressure for all the newer guys on the pitch, all the defenders on the pitch, trying to figure things out. So yeah, a strong defense is a better offense. So let's see if he can start producing, putting goals in the back of the net like he did for Benfica. So yeah, I think he's going to be key. If they get off to a strong start, if the press is working and he gets his chances and he puts those away, then I think it's happy days for Liverpool.
Yeah, no, great shout. I think that would have been my choice as well. The price tag that he came for and the disappointing goal return that he had for Liverpool last season was, of course, something that stood out. But this season, like Mac and yourself mentioned, it's his second season. Should be used to it now. Got a full preseason involved and has been in the goals here and there throughout the preseason. So no excuse for him to sort of not hit the ground running if chances are there. So that's going to be a huge, I guess, definer for how the season will go for Liverpool. And so I'm left with no other choice than to pick my player, which will be a defender, Ibrahima Konate. That's the center back partnership for Virgil van Dijk. He's had an on and off season last year, a couple injuries here and there, so he didn't feature as much. Van Dijk still is, so now is of course the club captain, but has had a decline in his form and his quality, especially noticeable last season. And so that center back partnership with him leaking goals towards the end of the last season was not great. We'll be interested to see how he bounces back this season. Of course, the mistakes and him covering for the likes of Alexander-Arnold will be huge for this upcoming season, especially in transition when teams like to swing the ball around and attack wide areas. So big season ahead for him. It's going to be between him and Van Dijk. Of course, eyes will be on Van Dijk, but more so I think for myself on him because he's the center back partnership, similar to how I chose Gabriel next to Saliba. The fewer mistakes you have as a center back, the better and out of the spotlight you are. And so that's sort of how you have to be to have a successful season as a center back. So we'll be interested to see how he does, especially now that he's been in the club for a couple of years and has to sort of live up to the expectation now for that. So someone that I'll be watching for sure, Konate, and how he does in the next season. And that leaves us now, Mac, with sort of our predictions for next season. What does a good season look like for Liverpool? I think we might all have different answers for this one, but Mac, let me hear yours first.
To be completely honest, what they need to do and what's considered a successful season for them, I don't think is to be in a position to change the Premier League title again. I don't think they're there yet. I think that if you brought in a couple more players in midfield, I think they should be in that conversation. So just under that. So I'm going to go, if they finish third, that's an excellent season from Liverpool. They finished fifth last year. Very disappointing, but not as disappointing as a lot of the other teams around them. The difference, I think, will be this year is that a lot of the other teams at the top, I would argue, have improved as much, if not more, as Liverpool has. So can they still catch up? Can they still close that gap? So I think that's a great season. But as long, again, third, I think is the best possible position they could finish in. But ideally, a top 4 Champions League football in the following season is minimum.
Okay, great shout there. Gio, similar question for you.
Yeah, similar question to me, but similar answer to Mac. I think a third or fourth, anywhere in the realm of Champions League football, I think is another win for them, getting back into the mix. But I think beyond that, I think it's the consistency that they get there at. Obviously with the drop-offs last season where, they go in and smash a team 7-1 or smash a team's, Man U, they smashed a team 9-0. Whatever the case may be, scoring that amount of goals and then the next 4 games scoring a total of 4 goals just isn't it. So it's the consistency they do it at. I think fans will be much more happy, much more content if the level of play is consistent and the effort is there. So 3 and 4, I think should be quite fulfilling to the fans. Sprinkle in the EFL Cup, I think it's a huge win for them, and I think it's still possible. I think a lot of clubs have a lot of different things to focus on, such as an Arsenal, such as Man U, who are back in the Champions League mix and need to rotate players a lot more. Liverpool can use this as an advantage and compete hard for those cup competitions and hopefully can put another trophy in the cabinet.
So, sorry, Gio, to jump in. So you're calling a EFL Cup win for Liverpool against Chelsea on pens? Are we doing this again? Is this we're going back to what happened? No?
I wouldn't mind seeing that. I would not mind seeing that at all.
Hey, cup competitions are going to be huge, and actually that brings me to my point. Of course, I agree. Champions League positions, top 4, will be a big objective for the team next season. I think, of course, 3rd and 4th will be the base expected level to accomplish. Now, it might not be at the end of the season. It might not happen, but I think going into the season, that's what Klopp will tell his team. Top 4 is the expected where we finish next season. That being said, I think, and I've been mentioning this since last season, it was determined Liverpool won't have any Champions League football. Europa League, I think without a doubt Liverpool is the best team in that competition. So if the team don't reach at least the quarters or semifinals, I think that's going to be definitely a negative and a not accomplishing what we're set out to do with the quality that you have. The budget that you have compared to a lot of those teams, to go far into that competition is something that I think all fans should expect. And even if you pick up the trophy, it's not the Champions League, but it's still a European trophy. And with the quality that you have, it shouldn't be too difficult to at least reach those latter stages. But ultimately, yeah, top 4 is I think going to be the target. And figuring out, like Gio said, figuring out what's going to be the most consistent way to get those positive results would be the long-term goal, rather than just finding the perhaps the first 11 that you're going to run with. Because as we saw, a lot of players came into the team, a lot of changes were made, and not a lot of things worked until the very end of the season. And so the sooner, I guess, Klopp gets his lineups going, and his system going, the better it'll be. So yeah, something to keep an eye out for. But that being said, we'll definitely keep an eye out with an eye out for those transfers that are still yet to happen as the season is coming up in essentially a week's time once sort of this podcast comes out. And so we'll definitely be keeping out an eye out on that. So we'll conclude the podcast here for today, guys. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at House of_Footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us at via email as well, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be will be tomorrow as we continue our coverage of the preseason, covering, of course, Manchester United. And on that note, thank you, Mac.
Ray, can you do me a favor? Just move your head to one side real quick, just to one side. So you'll never walk alone. That's right, boys. Okay, sorry.
Gio?
5th place finish.
See you guys soon.